Our next presentation is be discussing single action rifles of the 1870s. So with that, Barry.
Okay, thank you. All right, so I get to be quite specific in this, and we're going to talk about the guns that I own. All right. So this is, it's like Martin just said, this is a discussion of the single shot actions for cartridge guns. Right, they were the, kind of that first generation of cartridge single action gun. So effectively, you can think of it maybe from 1865-ish up until the end of the 1870s when the repeater begins to take over. So what I have here is an example of single action rifles that were made and used by the major powers. All right, so there's a few that we are missing. I am missing Russia. So I do not have a Berdan 2. But of the major powers, I have it. The other interesting thing about this period in Europe, it's a relatively peaceful period in Europe. So these guns, none of these guns fought against another European nation. Right? So there's the kerfuffle that the Prussians and French had in 1870. Those were not fought with metallic cartridge rifles. Those fought with the Chassepot and the Dreiser, which are both effectively paper cartridge and needle guns. So, so that's where we're kind of limiting this discussion. So we're going to go over different action types, and then we're going to do a comparison to see if we can figure out which one was the actually easiest to load, fire, eject. All right, and this is going to be completely arbitrary. It's going to be your opinion, my opinion, we're just going to do it. And we're also going to let people try these things out. Okay. So I'm going to try to do this chronologically, although it's kind of difficult because there's kind of mixes here. But let's just start with the Snider. All right, many of us in the British military forum got our first experience on this with the Snider. Right, so the Snider itself is a conversion of the Enfield P53. Right, this particular rifle is not. This is a commercially made one. I tend to focus more on commercial made ones. So this is a Charles Ingram made in Glasgow. But to the pattern, you can always tell they're commercial because they have the Snider patent written on the shoe. Right, but so this action doesn't really have a name. So what we call this is the Snider action, okay? So you'll see a lot of other guns that adopted the Snider action. Most of the other actions are more descriptive, all right? So Snider, you just have to know what a Snider is to know what a Snider action is, right? So the basic function of the Snider action is bringing the hammer to half cock, right? And the earlier marks, you just flip them up. This one actually has a lever. Open it up. Insert the cartridge, so if the block rotates to the side, insert the cartridge, close it, bring to full cock, fire. And then the unload action is bring it back to half cock, open, and then to eject the round, pull sharply back on the block, which ejects the round generally into the chamber, or into the receiver. Do not throw it out of the gun. So then the trooper has to dump the cartridge out. All right, so surprisingly easy to do. And interestingly enough, when you watch a lot of people who intuitively, right, when they do that, they open it, they dump this way. For some reason, we've noticed that. Of course, all that did was slam close the action. So, all right. Very simple, all right, very strong. All right, there's nothing to blow this thing any other direction. So, and from us in the community, one of the favorites. All right, so that's the Snider action. All right, I guess chronologically, really, the next one I should talk about is the American Trapdoor. And while the immediate one was the 50-70 Allen conversion trapdoor, which were made with the a sleeved 58 caliber barrel, similar to the Ward Burton, which we saw earlier. It's sleeved down to 50, right? And it's a similar concept where you just have to cut the barrel, make a few adjustments to the inletting the stock, a new hammer, and you're ready to go. Now this one again, you bring the hammer to half cock, right? Flip forward, right, which opens the trap door. Insert your cartridge, slam shut, go to full cock, you're ready to fire. And to unload, this one actually works a little differently. Again, to half cock, and then smartly open it. And there is a rather strong extractor, which throws the cartridge back to hit this little indentation, or not indentation, what's the opposite of indentation? Protrusion, right, which then flings the cartridge out. So this one, most of the time, the cartridge is out. So you don't have to worry about manually extracting or dumping the cartridge. So in some ways, a little bit better than the Snider, right, because you get that extra bit. Now, this one is actually a later mark, all right, and so this one was made, this particular one was made in the 1880s. I decided to include it in my 1870s talk because there really isn't too much materially different between them. All right, so that's a good representation. This is actually a rather nice one. It still has its cartouches, shoots very well. Martin, did you have a case? Somebody throw me that case? Because this is the funnest one to eject. So we have an empty cartridge here. And you don't mind if this thing gets thrown, do you, Martin?
No.
Okay. So here we go, ready? Okay. No doubt that thing is going to fly out. And by the way, it's a wonderful sound and feeling. So thank you, Martin. So that one does eject very smartly. Okay. Now we'll go to Austria. Again, Austria still being a major player, right? We have the Werndl, and the Werndl uses a rotating block action, also sometimes known as a tabernacle action, right? Because of how it rotates, all right? So a tabernacle thing where it rotates around, all right? And this is too, you bring it, it has a very shallow half cock, which allows you to then open it. So it opens like this, all right? Again, insert the cartridge, close it, go to full cock, fire, go to half cock, smartly whack it. And right at the end, you see that little click at the end? That forces the extractor to go. Sometimes it does fly out nicely. More often than not, it flies out to about here, and you have to jingle it out or knock it out. But still pretty good ejection, all right? There's not much more to say about that one. All right. So now we head into things that are probably a little more, this one's rather more obscure. This is the Peabody. And the Peabody is the forerunner of the Martini, right? So the Peabody is an American made and was adopted in Spain and in the Ottoman Empire and evaluated in Switzerland. Right, and was it Frederick Martini looked at one of these and said, boy, he can make it better. All right, so we have this will become the Martini action, but it is a tilting block, so the whole block tilts forward, all right, allowing you access to load the cartridge, close it. It still has a hammer to go to full cock, right? So fire, you have to bring it to half cock. Smartly hit the lever, and the cartridge will go anywhere from oof to flying out. So not necessarily one that always ejects fully, but it's just a swipe of the finger or a dump, you can usually get it out. All right, so there's a couple of things odd with this one though, in that it's a lot of extra action. And this is probably one of the more complicated because your hand has to do this and your hand has to do this, and you know, a couple of iterations. So then the Martini-Henry, right, has eliminated the hammer, right, has a nice lever, all right, to open it up. So if you look at the difference here, you can see the throw of the two, and you get a lot more purchase on the Martini, much easier to use. That opens the action, insert the round, close the action. Cocking indicator does tell you that it is actually cocked. Not that it's loaded, but that it's cocked. Of course, you have to know what direction to look. All right, so you have to know what a martini is. Do it. All right. Fire. After we fire it, smartly rack down. The cartridge will go. I'd like that will either fly right out or fly a little bit out, but usually enough that you can flick it out. So. And of course, in our community, this is one of the mainstays. All right, so then we go into the bolt actions. All right, so then again, the Franco-Prussian War, the Germans go into it with the Dreiser, a bolt, you could call it a bolt rifle, but a needle gun. The French have the chassepot, very similar to the Dreiser, and they beat each other up for a while, and both realized that the era of the needle gun is over, right? The world is moving to metallic cartridges, so start moving on. And the Germans built this magnificent beast of a gun. This is the first Mauser. The Mauser 1871, so made right after the end of the Franco-Prussian War. And most modern bolt action folks will be very familiar with how a lot of this works. Back the bolt, you notice there's no magazine, so you just slam the round in, close the bolt, you're ready to go. You can actually tell it is loaded by, or it is cocked by the cock indicator. And any of you shoot modern Mausers, right? You'll all recognize that guy, won't you? So that's already the Mauser safety. So again, very easy to tell if the gun is safe, right? So of course, after you fired it, rack it. Oh, and it doesn't actually, it extracts, does not eject. So this is one that you also have to dump the round, all right? So no ejector, just an extractor. And of course, they expected these two guns, this is the French Gras, which is a direct descendant of the chassepot. So the rifle barrel action are the same, the bolt is different. I'm sure there's a few other parts between the two. However, it is actually rather smooth system, right? So very similar again to the Mauser. Maybe a few more bits hanging off of it, but the exact same manual of arms. Open it up, close, and in. All right, a cocking indicator is that this is further back. So you can still see that it's been, there's an uncocked state. You can see it's not so far back. All right, so you fired it, and the same thing. Open it up, it extracts, no ejector, right? So, again, a dump. Actually, this one, does this eject? It may actually eject too. There's a spring up here that may eject. All right, so that does cover with the major powers of Europe minus Russia and the US. But then there's the rest of the world, okay? So the AK-47 of its era, the gun that was deployed everywhere else, right, is the Remington Rolling Block. So not used much by the United States, however, used everywhere else. So if you did have one of these, you will have used one of these. So that includes Central America, South America, the Caribbean, North Africa, Middle East, right? And its action is called a rolling block because the block literally rolls. And the beautiful thing about this one is this thing locks up unquestionably tight. That is not going back, no way, no how. All right, so when you fire it, it is completely locked up. You bring it to half cock, still nothing. To full cock, now releases the block, and the block can open to be loaded. Right? So load the cartridge, close the rolling block, all right? And at this point, you can still eject it and fire it. The moment the hammer moves even a little bit forward, it's relocked. So as the hammer falls, it's locked. And you can see it open, closed. I only moved it a millimeter or two, right? So as it falls, it's nice. The manual of arms, full cock, open, load the cartridge, close, you're ready to go. Okay, you can tell it's ready to go because the hammer's back. However, the hammer's back. This thing is ready to fire now. All right, so to make it not ready to fire, you'd have to bring it down to half cock manually, which of course begs the question of, yeah, letting it slip, and then it goes bang. So there was another variant of the rolling block that was adopted by the New York State Militia that automatically, when you closed this, it automatically brought that to half cock with it. So you had to close it and then again go to full cock. So full cock to open it, close it, then full cock to fire. All right. However, of all of these, this is by far mechanically the simplest and probably mechanically the strongest. All right. So its manual of arms looks kind of funny, right? But it's actually not that bad. All right. I do have here a Swiss Vetterli, which is a repeater, so technically doesn't belong in the discussion. However, I don't have an Italian Vetterli, which is very similar, except it's not a repeater. So this actually came first. This is actually a 1860s design, which predated most of these guns, and it's a repeater. And in good Swiss fashion, this is actually the era before the Swiss Patent Office. This thing egregiously hits the patent for the Henry rifle. So if any of you are familiar with the Henry, that lifter and that side gate and that tube feeding mechanism are straight up Henry. All right, but we're only going to think about this as the single shot. All right, so the Italian version was just like the other bolt action. Open, of course that doesn't come flying up. Load, close, fire, open and ejects. So, ejects up, yes, ejects up. All right, so, and cocking indicator, the little nub in the back tells you it's cocked. So for those of you who are watching this, potentially later on YouTube, also in the series we have a discussion of the Ward Burton rifle, which didn't have any way to indicate it was cocked. So. All right, so that's the overview. So first I want to pause. Are there any quick questions about what we have here?
You'll know more about this than I do, but does the difference between a roll and a formed brass cartridge going to affect the ejection? The same Snider?
Yeah, that's
because don't all these rifles pretty much exist in the area of the rolled?
Okay, the ones that use the rolled cartridges are going to be the Snider and the Martini-Henry. Okay. All right, just about all the others went straight for a drawn bronze or a drawn brass cartridge. And yes, both the Snider and the Martini-Henry could be affected in extraction if that foil cartridge expanded too much or broke. Right, so that could cause some problems, right? I believe all the others went straight to a drawn brass.
I know the Trapdoor anecdotally, that little bighorn, they had to have a sergeant with a bronze.
Right, and those were probably the bronze bronze cartridges.
They were copper.
Copper, yeah, okay, copper cartridges.
They ripped the
Yeah, so they were grippy and they.
extractor.
Yeah.
So the actions here are going to be affected by the kind of ammunition.
They definitely affected by. Right, so, okay. So anybody want to think, what are your opinions? Which one do you think is the action that you would most want to go into battle with of all of these actions? Give in mind of not making a mistake while loading and speed. What? Okay, the Vetterli aside, because besides the Vetterli.
Martini, I would go with.
I hear a Martini.
I like the Remington.
The Remington, okay. I personally would choose the Martini, all right? But I would also want to say that we sometimes overthink the problem, that part of it. Because what is actually the slowest part of the reload process? Something I didn't show you. All right. Thank you. All right, so we'll go grab our martini. Boom. Dig for the ammo, find the ammo, take the ammo out, put it in, go. That's where, so I would say this is more of a discussion of the efficiency of your web gear rather than what you have to do. However, the Martini-Henry, I will give it also that it is relatively easy. All right, my hand doesn't need to move much, but then my hand needs to move. All right, because the hand always needs to move. But the hand comes back to the same location. Okay, and I'm going to go, the worst of those are the two bolt actions we have. Now, look how far forward that handle is. All right, so when you fire, hand comes completely off to go up here. Hand ends up completely out to go here. So open, fiddle with the cartridge, get the cartridge in, hand back, hand forward, hand is now not near the trigger, hand back to the trigger. So every other bolt action after these, all right, once they figured out forward locking lugs, because this thing locks with the bolt against the receiver. Once at forward locking lugs, they can move the bolt handle back behind the receiver. So your Lee Enfields, your Mauser, your later Mausers all have that, which means everything is all in the same workspace here. But both the Gras and the Mauser have pretty much the exact same issue. All right, you're coming off the trigger guard, moving forward, operating it, putting the cartridge in. I went really fast there, didn't I? It took a lot longer to dig through your cartridge and find it. Close it, and now hand comes back. So somebody said rolling block. Okay. Yeah. It actually is pretty sweet. All right. So it is two actions both in the same workspace. All right. So your thumb has to move, but your hand is in the same workspace. All right. So open, then in, and you're ready to go. So that's pretty quick.
Yeah.
That's pretty quick.
In spite of the fact that it's a danger now,
Yeah.
all you have to do is pull the trigger. I
Yeah.
don't have to cock the hammer again.
Yeah. So the New York State Militia one, you had to cock the hammer again. So.
I'll have to tell you the story of the Mark I defensive hammer.
So, and also, again, robust beyond belief. So is the Martini-Henry, is robust beyond belief. All right. So of the actions, the bolt actions are probably the weakest. All right. And then the Trapdoor is pretty good. All right. The Werndl, it's okay in terms of strength. The Snider, good. But this, rock solid action. So, however, the major powers never use this. All right, so this is the, and this one is a Remington made, 43 Spanish, no idea where it went. All right, some of these you can figure where they went based on a few marks on it. This is one that could have gone anywhere, so probably not to Argentina. The Argentina tended to have more markings on it. So this ended up probably somewhere, and based on its condition, somewhere in South or Central America or the Caribbean. Probably did not end up in North Africa. I don't think 43 Spanish was popular over there. I don't think so. But its condition means it's probably somewhere in at least in the North American, South American area. And yes, most likely a Bannerman. Almost certainly, this ended up back at Bannerman and was sold through them. Okay. Any other questions on the actions, John?
Question about the Remington. What was the cost of that versus the other one? Did the cost have anything to do with the popularity of it?
Okay.
Was it cheaper to make?
It was cheaper and easier to make. Of all of these, the Remington is the only one of these that was built under contract in other countries. All right, so Remington could supply you with what you needed to make it. I think the total part count in a rolling block is 36 parts. And in the action, it's only a few. It's like 5 in the action.
The other question, of course, comes to mind is what calibers are we looking at?
Yeah.
You know, as we close in on the 20th century, we're getting smaller and smaller.
Yeah.
We approach smokeless powder region.
Right. So my talk last year was using a similar set of rifles, but extended more, and that was the conversion from 58 caliber, nominal 58 caliber to nominal 45 caliber. Everything here falls into that range. Whether it is a 43 Spanish, a 45-70, this Peabody happens to be 45-70, but they were also done in 43 Spanish and a few others. All right, the 11 millimeter Mauser, 11 millimeter Gras, those are all ballistically very similar cartridges. The outlier is, of course, the still 58 caliber Snider, and the rather more stout Martini-Henry. Still a 45 caliber bullet, but rather more stout.
Another silly question. 43 Spanish. Where the hell do you find ammunition? You know, if it was such a popular weapon, why is it no? You wonder why it's no longer used.
Yeah. Well, why it's no longer used? The 45-70 won the longevity war. Okay. I can go to Walmart and buy 45-70 ammo. All right. 43 Spanish, 45-70 are very similar cartridges. Of course, they have a neck. But yeah, all of the other cartridges are gone. Right. So the joy of making our own cartridges comes into play. So, okay. Yes?
Yeah, that's kind of a weird one maybe. So Gras, like the back end of the bolt kind of looks like a Mosin? A little bit like a Mosin? Is there something that led to Mosin copying that to some degree?
I don't know, because the Mosin, you can actually pull it and cock it, all right? This, in the Gras, right, in the Chassepot, you actually cocked it from here, all right? So you would close it and then cock it. All right, this is literally a vestige of that, but there is no way I can cock this. All right, so this is now a cock on open. All right, so it's cammed in the receiver to open it. So yeah, but that thumb indent is a holdover from the Chassepot. All right, but there's no way I can cock this. I can uncock it, but no way can I cock it. So, yeah, no safety. Yeah.
And so you complain about the Remington.
Yeah. The Mauser has the actual good safety.
The French typically takes safeties.
Well, yeah. Again, the safety on the hammered guns is the hammer isn't back. All right. So, okay. So, more questions? Okay.
Check with Peter too.
Are there any questions from the peanut gallery?
No.
In the chat window?
No.
Yeah.
I checked with Peter.
Okay, all right. All right, so we have no questions from the peanut gallery. All right, well, that's all I have then. And tomorrow we'll get to shoot some of them. And right now, come on up and operate all these actions and figure for yourself which one you like.